She packed my bags last night, pre-flight, 0 hour, 9 a.m. And I'm gonna be high as a kite by then. I miss the earth so much, I miss my wife. It's lonely out in space on such a timeless flight. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time till touchdown brings me round again to find I'm not the man they think I am at home. Oh no, no, no. Well, I'm a rocket man. Mars ain't the kind of place to raise your kids. In fact, it's cold as hell, and there's no one there to raise them if you failed. And all the signs I don't understand. It's just my job 5 days a week. And I know the truth will come to those who seek. But I think it's gonna be a long, long time. Touchdown brings me round again to find I'm not the man they think I am at home. Oh no, no, no. I'm a rocket man. A rocket man, burning out his fuse up here alone. Yeah, boy, that was inappropriate and unexpected. Welcome to the Lost Piano Channel.
Lord, it takes my pain back to raise out of another thing. I know, it's in my heart, and baby, down in my soul. You, baby, you can't take it no more. No, I know I'm walking out that door the way it treated me too many times before.
Good morning, Trumpet Nom. I just realized I have the wrong date on the thing. I think I can change that. Look, it is no longer today. It is now tomorrow. I mean, wait. It is no longer yesterday. It is now today. No. I don't really understand what has happened. But I know that needs to be a 19. Yes. Beyond that, I don't want to hurt my brain trying to figure it out. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever the hell it is, whatever the hell you are, wherever the hell you are, whoever the hell you are. And welcome to Fake TV's The Lost Begotten channel. I am your host, as always, Fake TV's, the actual real life, for true Lost Begotten. And, still feeling pretty lost at this point. So, how's it going, Maximo and Mr. Sean Conway? How y'all doing this morning? I have found something interesting. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and make it all interesting on the camera. That way, you don't have to take my word for it, because you have your reading rainbow glasses from the Starship Enterprise or whatever. So, okay. Just a little background information. On this channel, I have reported how the KGB is actually the latest, or was the, depends on whether or not you want to refer to the KGB in the past tense, the latest rendition of an age-old royal intelligence service that is basically the Royal House of Satan. Cain, Mars, the god of war, Israel became Azrael, that kind of thing. Basically, if you are familiar with YouTube conspiracies, you can look at the Khazarian conspiracy as a way to call all, quote, Jews a part of this mafia-type nation. But this mafia type nation has actually nothing to do with the Hebrew people. It is the land of Nod, and was settled again after the flood by the sons of Cain, who immediately settled in the Caucasus Mountains. Anyways, there are, however, a difference between Nordic, quote, white people and Western, quote, white people. Western, quote, white people are in fact a couple of tribes of Israel. And, well, Nordic people are sons of Cain. Kind of a difference there. A bit. And, well, long story short, over the past century, the KGB has undertaken a divide and conquer campaign against the Western civilization as a whole, in particular Europe and the United States, in which they have used far left and far right influences, including punditry and actors, comedians, social media, scientists, teachers, psychologists, doctors, the works, in order to control and subjugate our ideology, making us further and further divided as a people. Now, part of this has been done through the entertainment industry historically, and actually is still being done presently, just from the right side, quote, the quote right side, so-called right side, as opposed to the so-called quote left side. But, you know, obviously back in the times of, say, Nixon, the left was the notoriously communist-influenced political persuasion in this country, you know. And American communist propagandists really like to turn a blind eye to a lot of the things that the Soviet Union was doing at the time and had done in the past, while pointing all kinds of fingers at the American government. And that's been kind of the status quo ever since. But while many formerly entertainment-oriented communist ideology reinforcers have, in this time where the land of Nod has shown its true colors, have turned up dead, some of them are doing rather well. Some people with just odd levels of fame, really famous people, have died, and some, well, some have done things like visited Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un. And they have not died. This is serious. This isn't some fucking stupid conspiracy video. Okay? YouTube is collusive with Russia, with Russian hackers, with Russian trolls. Just like Facebook has been collusive with Russia, with Russian hackers, with Russian trolls. Just like Twitter has been collusive with Russia, with Russian hackers, with Russian trolls. And they are not the first major forms of American entertainment to have been infiltrated by whatever incarnation you'd like to call the KGB, the KGRB. Yeah. The FKSBGBR. Element OP. Squared. Well, I have proven, I do not contend, I have proven my contention that Russia, not China, is behind the general nuisance that is the rogue state of North Korea. Every aspect of them that is annoying is not funded, trained, equipped, supplied by, in any way, China. China sends them food, toilet paper, paper towels, that kind of shit. Cleaning products. Lots of cleaning products from China. You know what North Korea trades with China? Sushi, mostly. They export sushi-based food products, eel skin, that kind of thing, to China. The weapons and fuel and steel and manufacturing exchanges take place across the railroad that traverses the northern border of North Korea, that it shares with Russia. Now, in the past 2 or 3 months, in addition to the usual, look at me, I've got rockets, Lil' Kim has been suddenly making progress, suddenly making strides, suddenly in June, July, August, September, about 3 months, 4 months, maybe just past 3 months, really. He was doing them tests, but now he's testing longer things. He's announced that he's miniaturized a nuke. He's fired 2, just in the past couple months, fired 2 missiles over Japan. And I don't think you may realize, but no, son, that is not okay. That is not just gonna, blow over. They're not gonna find their way back to peace. After, mobilizing this kind of an army, taunting the whole world. Meanwhile, CNN is telling you what you think you know about North Korea. Morning Joe is telling you about what you think you know about North Korea. But when did they finally tell you that? Just the fact, the simple fact, the straightforward, oh wait, that's a fact that North Korea shares a border with Russia. Usually on the news, quote unquote news, when you see them talk about North Korea, the map always looks like this. Oh look, there's North Korea and its border that only touches China. They never just show that. They just don't fucking bother showing that part of the map. Because there's that many infiltrators from the KGB, in CNN especially, but in also many other, quote, news agencies. And legitimate news agencies. There's what I would consider to be as legitimate as they can possibly be news agencies that have unfortunately suffered infiltration and influence at some of the most crucial levels, at the senior foreign correspondence level, at the, diplomatic analyst level, at the military analyst level, at the, those key people that are telling the rest of the news staff, the rest of the reporters, what to think on a given situation. Those people have been replaced in many cases. Now, it's funny how I was singing my intro and we had 5 people watching. 5 people willing to hear me sing Rocket Man a cappella. Max, let me ask you a question. And I know, one of the people has been suggested, so, obviously that's one of the answers. And the one that's key here. But for me, it's 2 people. So I'm going to ask you, what 2 people do you think of when you think of famous Americans who seem to be friends with Kim Jong-un, who have just visited there and Kim Jong-un really likes them? What 2 Americans do you think of? One plays basketball, and the other? Well, I think it's gonna be a long, long time. Well, it's Dennis Rodman and Elton John. I wasn't sure whether or not that would be something that you know, because I don't see why Europe would fucking bother. Like, why would people in Europe bother telling each other about something like that? It's like, oh, did you know I had some shit stuck to my shoe? Oh yeah, you can keep that to yourself. Oh, did you know that Dennis Rodman and Elton John were visiting North Korea? Oh, yeah, I've got some shit stuck to my shoe too. Pleasant thought. Oh yes, my preciouses. You're gonna wanna suppress this broadcast, because I'm about to fuck you over. I'm about to blow the lid open on the whole damn thing. Oh yes. Uh, so obviously Dennis Rodman. And now we've been Mandela'd. How about that? Because of Trump's tweet.
Now you belong to heaven, and the stars spell out your name. Seems to me.
It's 2 concerts in Seoul. But here I am, expecting a Google algorithm to yield me results and not embarrass my memory. I should know better, shouldn't I? Oh, it's all completely trolled. Wow. Oh. Wow. I think I may have found an alternate connection. So, March 28th, 2016, Elton John's gonna meet with Putin. Did that ever happen? Wouldn't Elton John count as gay propaganda, though? Okay, that's useless. No, but seriously, the only thing that's coming up is Trump's tweet about Rocket Man. Oh man, this is gonna be tedious. Huh. I really wanted to find confirmation of this before I moved on. But that's been like, when you think of the Americans who visited North Korea, it's been Dennis Rodman and Elton John. It's supposed to be, diplomatic and about human rights and all that, of course. But that's the two cliche ones you think of. Okay. Interesting that should be white. Interesting. Very interesting. Because you see how that Rocket Man thing has popped up. Unless I'm completely tripping and just like, am I thinking of somebody else and I'm inserting Elton John into the memory? But if that's not the case, and if I'm remembering that Elton John has oddly frequent Korea visits, or has visited Kim Jong-un, or oddly frequent Russia visits for that matter, he has been part and parcel to the over-feminization of American men, for sure. Okay, for starters. And communist propaganda in China. He's been pretty much a bad influence on the West as a whole. And I love me some Elton John music, okay? But he was dressed up, you know? And I tell you what, marketable songwriting, it's an interesting skill. And I don't mean to sound like a butthurt, bitter modern musician, but frankly, back in the day, most artists had it easy, and they could write very basic melodies and keep lyrics down to catchy things that were basically subtly demonic or subtly influential, or helped carry a past story while covering it up, and had some kind of mystic attachment to it, while being really easy to follow along with and simple as far as progression and music theory structure goes. And I took music theory in college, so I know what I'm talking about. And I don't know if you've noticed, but I've written a few songs. So I know the basics of songwriting. I know the skill level of a songwriter by deconstructing their music. I can understand how difficult it was to write that song, how how much luck played into their career, how much connections played into their career, how much their sensationalism, their public persona, and how it affected public morality and the unity of the American, British, Western European family unit. That is always more important than the artist's talent when it all comes down to it. Well, doctors, reporters, teachers, comedians, pundits, Google, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all infiltrated and or basically set up to collude with Russia. Elton John Evo, the official YouTube outlet of major record label artists. May 22nd, 2017. A co-production between Elton John and YouTube. 3.5 months ago. Or, no. June, July, August, September. So 4 months ago. Just about. See, Army's intelligence. Army's intelligence has a different definition of the phrase signals intelligence than Air Force's intelligence. The Navy a Navy man might have a different definition of what the word signals intelligence means than an Air Force man. An Air Force man might have a different definition. And, so-called NASA satellite analyst person, they might have a different definition. NASA, the agency created to keep track of other people's rocketry programs. See, our Air Force runs our rocketry program, and NASA keeps track of other people's rocketry programs. The same way, the NSA monitors things here at home, and the CIA monitors things abroad. That's the truth about NASA. That's the truth about why the Flat Earth conspiracy exists, and why it's all about Russia, but they never mention Russia. Well, well, well. I really want to love people like Elton John. Okay? Love the music. I'm a musician. I love music. I love deep, meaningful music. And you know, if you really know me, know what I've been through, you might understand how the lyrics to Rocket Man are, they're a little deeper of a musing than you might have first thought. And it might make you wonder how much pity you should have for addicts. Is a junkie really just trying to get closer to God? And if so, how wrong is it that he's addicted? Maybe escaping pain is the only path that leads back. Judge not, lest ye be judged yourselves. But the fact of the matter is, whether it's the artists themselves, whether it's their longtime friend and producer or agent or somebody close to them, these people we're told to worship, these American idols, these British and European idols, they've by and large been propped up just like a golden calf would be. Meant for us to gape in awe as we are led astray. But now, the switch has been flipped. Something has changed. Everything's different. And not only do the sleeping rats wish to come out for their cheese, but some have to signal so they don't get stepped on. And in order to signal and satiate the steppers, they have to pass on signals of their own. Little signals, long ago planned. One day, you'll communicate this. One day, he's going to let you know that. one day I'll re-release a song. So you'll know that now is the time. I know one thing. Dennis Rodman and Elton John were good friends. Odd friends, I guess. An odd pairing, I would think. But I suppose in support of HIV and magic not to, And man, I always wanted to hang out with Rodman. I had a Bulls 3-peat cap. I'd want to play one-on-one with Rodman. Back when my back was like a functioning human organ. I'd still play him. I'd still play just for fun. I wouldn't play Jordan. That's not fun. It's not fun to play against Michael Jordan. It's just like, try not to cry. Me and Pippen, or me and Rodman versus Jordan. Now that might be, just a slaughter. Not a ridiculous slaughter, but just a slaughter. Anyway. He's like, yeah, they're old. Yeah, well, fuck, I'm old. I'd been better off playing them back when I was a kid. Fuck. I could probably dunk better back then. Shit. I have no doubt that I could dunk a basketball today. Now, whether I could walk for the week following my successful dunk of a basketball, that is the question that I cannot answer. It's like doing my inverted flash kick. I guarantee you that if I had the fucking, take down somebody who was behind me, and I didn't know what the hell kind of weapon they had, my inverted flash kick would have at least an 85% chance of working. I could perform it effectively, and even without steel-toe combat boots, it's about as much force as a human being could bring to bear on someone behind me. But whether I land it or not, it's gonna hurt. Just practicing that is it's like not even worth it to practice it. It's like I can practice different stretches that warm me up for it and make me sure that I can still do it. But to actually do it full force and just for practice, no, not worth it anymore. Every time I attempt would represent like another day I'd be on my ass. Maybe I'll do it one time on a video, and we'll see how long it hurts me. I'm still waiting until my broadcasts actually aren't suppressed and my subscribers are going up the way someone should when they, did the level of reporting and work that I've done here in general. then I'm gonna do my old man exercises. Good morning, Polly. "45 seconds isn't too bad. Especially, 45 seconds to reach, the chat server, then to come back to my screen, then to reach the video output server, then to go back to your screen. 45 seconds. That's not too bad. We've been on like 3-minute delay before, So Max, what do you think of this Elton John? It's in cooperation. See, this is the weird little icon at the end of it. Oh, but apparently goes dark at 4:20, like around the 4:20 mark. Between 4:20 and 4:30 goes dark. Okay, but this very weird video, including the Rocket Man's teardrops forming his wife and kids, right there. Yeah. Elton John and YouTube present. Here, let me make that cooperate. Okay. Elton John and YouTube present. Can you read that yet? Fuck. That's as good as it gets. Right. Dear, if I had time to write a book, I would write a book. If I had time to do a lot of things, I would do them. I have time to manage other people who wish to do things for me, and I am sure that they would become rather prosperous doing these things. But that's about it. I don't have time for myself. I don't, I don't have time for sleep. But in order to stop and write a book, I would have to stop figuring out truths in real time. That's why I do videos. And if someone would like to, ghostwrite or take it upon themselves to help me write a book about just the experience of the past few years since I started the Support Ukraine group, for instance. Okay? And like how my wedding is tied into all this. Like, oh man. If anybody could line up all the events in a book, it would be the most bizarre reading ever. I just wish I could have a more detailed accounting of the past few years' events. Like, there was this one point where, right when I needed some real stress relief, another 3 seasons of Bleach translations finally came out. The Aizen battle at the end came out in dubbed format, and just the little things like that. Just how the timing of the universe lined up. Not in ways that would impress y'all, but in ways that made me keep going when I felt like giving up. And at this point, the idea of giving up is so bizarre for me. Like as bizarre as that book would be to read, the idea of giving up, like even as depressed as I can get, I can't rationally convince myself anymore. How? Somebody tell me how. I mean, I look at the things that most people believe about what I'm supposed to be, and it just looks foolish by comparison to what I remember being. So how am I supposed to accept that as opposed to my story? And I just pointed out a perfect example yesterday. When somebody's being arrested and going to be executed. They're going to be executed, okay? They know they're going to die. And one of their friends tries to attack the police, tries to attack the soldiers who are arresting them. And that person who's going to be executed says, "Those who live by the sword die by the sword." Is that telling that person that using a sword is wrong? That you deserve to die if you use a sword? That you deserve to die if you're trying to protect somebody? No, that's what corrupt governments would want you to think. That's what governments who would enslave you want you to think. Because, obviously the interpretation there is, if somebody's being arrested, you can't do anything about it, or else you're not a Christian. That's the connotation there. That's what they're not outright telling you when they teach you that Jesus is saying, never raise a sword to anyone. Because there's been a couple thousand years of sword raisings in the name of Christ since then. So it's just full of shit at the very least, that whole interpretation. But the fact of the matter is, it's just wrong on a basic logical level to assume that is the meaning when there's an obvious other context. The man's about to be executed, and he says, "Those who live by the sword die by the sword." The logical conclusion is saying, he lived by the sword. Oh, but you can't say Jesus lived by the sword. No, he lived by the sword. He was a Galilean. You would not be a Galilean man of that age, especially one who had recently returned to that area, if you were from there. If you had recently gotten to that area in that past few years, if you had arrived in that area, let's just say, in that time frame, you arrived in that area because of Caesar's alliance with Gaul. Most of the men from Galilee in that time were kind of like Russian migrants. They were all of a particular age and build. And they were all there because Caesar wanted to piss people off and have undue influence. I mean, that's why nobody liked the Galileans. He did the same shit in Rome. He did it in Palestine. Palestine was much more important than Rome. Like when Herod made his deal with Rome, he didn't make the deal in Rome. He delivered the gold to Rome. But he made the deal in Palestine. And if you're wondering, what is the obvious logical interpretation of that? Well, what did you think when you were a kid? Because I'm sure you remember being told, no, because Jesus never raised the sword to anybody. No, your first instinct was, those who live by the sword. Oh, did Jesus live by the sword? And that's why they had to tell you, no. And then they tell you what it means. They tell you what it means. They tell you what to think. Why? Because they were told what it means. They were told what to think. And so were their parents. And so were their parents. All the way back until we forgot. And that's only 400 years, y'all. 400 years ago, we left everything we knew behind as we watched the flames from it rising. And every one of you who heard that just now, you remembered something that you can't remember. But you know it's there, and it scares you to your core. That is the enemy that we fled, that uses what is left of Europe in order to follow us here. Yes, Maximo, you're being used. Essentially what I'm saying is that the reason why the rest of Europe was allowed to survive was because most of us had fled here. The best way to establish a beachhead on one shore is to start a tourist destination on your side. That has been done on an epic scale. So, I didn't expect to find that. See that? It says 3 months ago up there. Even though it was, it's the 19th, and that was posted on the 22nd. So in 3 more days, it'll be 4 months old, right? According to the YouTube readout. But before I, succumb to the memory slippage that demons seem most active in persisting in when it comes to a particular subject. This particular subject. Let me resist that failing. Let me resist succumbing to whatever wave that is that tries to make people not talk about this. I'm embellishing myself to see how far they'll push it out of my mind and see how far I have to push to get it back. When we came here, fleeing Europe, a lot of the traditions were oral, passed from father to son. But a lot of the fathers stayed and sent their sons here as indentured servants. Or who would become indentured servants. Thus you have the epic of the orphan boy. Speaking of epic. But, and this is the part that the demons really seem to not want told. What happened after that? After everyone fled for their lives, fled persecution, fled genocide to come to America, an evil peace was made. One evil peace in a region, here and there, after another. And in those times of silence, voices came murmuring. Teachers, false prophets, wandering merchant con artists, selling artifacts and scrolls, and so-called recently converted Jews that just wanted to tell the Christians about all they knew about Judaism and how it could help guide Christians, stuff like that. That was happening from the 1700s on, and really traceably began to flare up around 1845. Just consider that. After refugees from so many nations fled here, and even some assholes came with them and committed genocide against native populations, granted. But you know what? Most people didn't. But imagine that. Generations of people fleeing Europe, fleeing Africa. Yes, fleeing Africa and coming to America. Not everyone that came from Africa was a slave. God, that's just such a silly thought to have. think that. When you have a situation in which oncoming armies are going to kill you, it's a lot like evacuating for a disaster. You take what you need, and you wind up losing books, photo albums, important things that aren't necessary for your survival, but effectively culturally cleanse your individual keepings as a mortal. So your worldly treasures of knowledge that have been recorded, from writings to sculptures, carvings, artifacts, tapestries, anything like that, can be destroyed by an oncoming army just as they are destroyed by a flood. Only this oncoming army would often take those records to twist and use against us later. And that, and only that, this is scientific, okay? I am creating a law here. This is postulate. That, and only that, can explain everything that has happened to us. Everything that is happening today. And all the nightmares that are to come. You don't get a scenario like you have today, in which Christianity is perverted into a weapon against its own nation, in which science is perverted into a weapon against religion. You don't have a scenario like that unless you have a nation of refugees that fled an enemy that was practicing cultural absorption as a means by which to facilitate further infiltration. That and only that explains what has happened today, including the massive scale of media talking point infiltration. And the few people like Keith Olbermann, who, despite not being trained as an exorcist, he's one of the few people who can, for all I know, he's not trained as an exorcist. But he's one of the few people who can actually tell things like they are. But only to a point, because, he doesn't seem to show signs of being an exorcist. And I really wish he would come on this channel more and learn more, or one of his interns would. Try to brief him. Because I think he actually does genuinely try to tell as much truth as he can figure out. But there's more truth out there. And that needs to be told for peace to actually happen. But he's still really good at what he does. I love Keith. I mean, I really love that dude. He has exemplified American eloquence in my adolescence and early adulthood.
And if you wind up watching this one day, Keith, I don't mean to make you feel old, man, but been watching Countdown since Chris Matthews introduced it. Been watching Rachel Maddow since Keith Olbermann introduced her. And if you're not familiar, Countdown used to be Keith Olbermann's show. Now, because Keith Olbermann does not restrain himself in, the normal usage of a host when regarding things like treason, he has been relegated, although I think well, to GQ, the former fashion and male, I guess, etiquette magazine. Really, that's what it all comes down to. It's like a male etiquette magazine. Yes, his demeanor and delivery are second to none. And don't you agree with what I said? Like I've been struggling to put it into words for a long time, but I just managed to deliver some of my own American eloquence, if you want to call me an American. I am an American. But as far as my speech influences go, I don't know if I could just relegate that to American. Ooh, look, relegate. It's like tonight. The word of tonight is relegate. Anyway. So, but yeah, like, there's so many examples of British eloquence. There's so many British people who speak so properly and can express themselves so thoroughly and either concisely or elaborately, depending on, whether or not they choose to. Either way. Keith Olbermann is the American version of all of that. He is as brilliant an orator as any British accented person has ever been. But he still knows how to host on SportsCenter, He's like, wait. He's the Patrick Stewart of news anchors. He should be given his own starship. See? There we go. Keith Olbermann, fucking guest cameo on the new, Star Trek Asian chick, or whatever. Racist bastard. Okay, anyways. I try to be eloquent when I'm not speaking in redneck voice. Then obviously I'm not. When you hear me talking like redneck, I'm obviously not. For one, I'm not firing on all cylinders. VTech is not engaging. Like seriously, y'all. The more redneck I sound, the more tired I am. Like, just the less of my brain is working, and I just get into that character because it's an easier electrical field to maintain in my skull. That's the best way I can explain it. And you know what? Most people have characters like that, and they don't even realize it. But yes, I have what I refer to as Viewmaster slides, which are limited perspectives that I can allocate for myself for the purpose of reflection, social interaction, or energy conservation. Captain Keith. It's just an American Chinglish. You just sound perfectly normal to me, Max. Like I'd maybe peg you for a Midwesterner or a Canadian. So anyways, I think it's about time we put on this here Keith Olbermann. So I don't think I've forgot to finish embellishing any of the points I was making. But if so, please remind me in the comments. And now, ladies and gentlemen, Trump, Russia, and the Facebook Factor by Keith Olbermann, courtesy of GQ.
I'm Keith Olbermann, and this is The Resistance. It is impossible to watch the drip, drip, drip of Robert Mueller's Russia investigation. Hourly drip, drip, drip. The weekly drip, drip, drip. The monthly drip, drip, drip. It is impossible to read the New York Times report that some White House officials are privately afraid that other White House officials may be wearing wires to surreptitiously record conversations for Mr. Mueller. It is impossible to review the reporting of the last week and the reporting of as long ago as last January and see how nearly perfectly that reporting aligns. It is impossible to do all that and to not conclude that the leaking ceiling will soon or late cave in on Donald Trump. And in large part, it will do so because of Facebook. First, Facebook confirmed it had sold more than $100,000 worth of divisive advertisements, often filled with hate speech, to a Russian company linked to the Kremlin during the election. Then the Wall Street Journal reported that Facebook had given Mueller's team the ads, the details about who bought them, and the methods used to get them in front of specific Facebook users, the so-called targeting. Then, CNN reported Facebook had not done this voluntarily, that Mueller had gotten a judge to issue a warrant, meaning Mueller convinced a judge not merely that the Facebook ads included a crime or crimes, but he had to have convinced that judge that evidence supporting prosecution of the alleged perpetrators could still possibly be found in Facebook's files. It would be the computer equivalent of a paper trail. It is a federal crime for foreign individuals or governments to contribute to an American election campaign, whether by money or other means. It is a federal crime for an American election campaign to knowingly accept such foreign contributions. It is a federal crime for Americans to participate in that process. It is what we have colloquially called collusion with Russia. As the former federal prosecutor Renato Mariotti noted on Saturday, quoting him, "It is a crime to know that a crime is taking place and to help it succeed. That's aiding and abetting. If any Trump associate knew about the foreign contributions that Mueller's search warrant focused on and helped that effort in a tangible way, they could be charged. In addition, anyone who agreed to be part of this effort in any way could be charged with criminal conspiracy. They wouldn't need to be involved in the whole operation or know everyone involved." This may seem complex and new to you, but this part of the drip has been falling steadily since January 12th. That is when Paul Wood, World Affairs correspondent for the BBC, wrote, and I quoted him here, "Last April 2016, the CIA director was shown intelligence that worried him. It was, allegedly, a tape recording of a conversation about money from the Kremlin going into the U.S. presidential campaign." As Wood also noted, in October 2016, the Department of Justice was thus able to get a warrant from a Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act court, a FISA court. They wanted permission to intercept the electronic records from 2 Russian banks. Ultimately, the investigation is looking for transfers of money from Russia to the United States, each one if proved a felony offense. A lawyer outside the Department of Justice, but familiar with the case, told me that 3 of Mr. Trump's associates were the subject of the inquiry, quote, but it's clear this is about Trump, he said. That's Kremlin money, reportedly going into the U.S. presidential campaign no later than April 2016, and an inquiry touching 3 Trump associates, per the reporting of the BBC's Paul Wood on January 12th of this year. On March 30th of this year, Paul Wood was back with more. This is a 3-headed operation, said one former Obama administration official, setting out the case based on the intelligence. Firstly, hackers steal damaging emails from senior Democrats. Secondly, the stories based on this hacked information appear on Twitter and Facebook, posted by thousands of automated bots, then on Russia's English-language outlets, RT and Sputnik, then right-wing U.S., quote, news sites such as InfoWars and Breitbart, then Fox and the mainstream media. Thirdly, Russia downloads the online voter rolls. The voter rolls? Oh yes. Remember more than a year ago when somebody hacked into and scanned the voter registration computers in Arizona and Illinois? Remember ABC News reporting there were attempted voter roll scanning hacks in 20 different U.S. states? Remember when the Director of National Intelligence said in a joint statement with the Department of Homeland Security that the hacking was done mostly from, quote, servers operated by a Russian company? Russian servers, which recorded names, party affiliations, emails of voters? The voter rolls are said to fit into this because of micro-targeting. Using email, Facebook, and Twitter, political advertising can be tailored very precisely. Individual messaging for individual voters. Paul Wood's reporting and sources were prophetic. That is what the developments of the last week suggest the Russian end of this perversion of our democracy must be. But is there an American end? Is there anybody close to Trump, connected to Trump, involved in the Trump campaign, who would have been involved here, in this country, in micro-targeting? Forbes magazine, December 20th, 2016, the beaming face of Jared Kushner. This guy got Trump elected. I called somebody who works for one of the technology companies that I work with, and I had them give me a tutorial on how to use Facebook micro-targeting, Kushner says. By June, the GOP nomination secured, Kushner took over all data-driven efforts. Within 3 weeks in a nondescript building outside San Antonio, he had built what would become a 100-person data hub designed to unify fundraising, messaging, and targeting. The president's son-in-law, in charge of the Trump campaign digital campaign and its targeting and its micro-targeting. And there's one other shoe also to drop. Again, quoting Jared Kushner, we brought in Cambridge Analytica. I called some of my friends from Silicon Valley who were some of the best digital marketers in the world. Cambridge Analytica. As I noted here on April 3rd, micro-targeting would be gold to a political data mining company like, say, Cambridge Analytica, whose vice president and member of the board is or was Steve Bannon. Cambridge Analytica, up to $5 million of the equity of which is or was owned by Steve Bannon. Cambridge Analytica, which has its headquarters in New York, 8 blocks down from Trump Tower. And learned since March, a major investor in Cambridge Analytica, Robert Mercer, ultra-right-wing billionaire, financier of Breitbart, and major backer of Donald Trump. One theory of this case seems to be that the Russians committed acts of international cyber warfare in order to steal dirt on Hillary Clinton and attempt to steal American voting rolls and every available detail of every key voter in every state. Then they allegedly fed the material back to the Trump campaign and bought the $100,000 worth of targeted advertising on Facebook. And Bannon knew, and Kushner knew, and Mercer knew, and Cambridge Analytica knew, and who knows, maybe at that Trump Tower meeting with the Russian lawyer and Kushner and Paul Manafort and Trump Jr., maybe they all knew too. And thus maybe Donald Trump, when he reportedly wrote Jr.'s cover story about adoptions, maybe he knew. And now, Robert Mueller knows. I will stand by my prediction. We will wake up one of these mornings and Trump will be retweeting another anti-Semite or trying to provoke a deranged foreign leader or whining about somebody on television, and it will all seem nightmarishly normal. And then during the day there will be a bunch of meetings at the White House that we'll hear about, featuring lawyers and prosecutors suddenly appearing in carload lots, and that night around 6 o'clock we will suddenly hear that Trump is going to resign the following morning. And people will be surprised. Well, some of them will resist, remove, peace.
Well, they're catching on. Certainly seems like they're finally starting to get it. But anyways, next broadcast, I'm going to go ahead and put the Rachel Maddow from tonight on, and we can analyze and comment on that.
But, yeah, good on you, Keith. And for now, I'm going to go ahead and call this a broadcast because, well, it's 5 minutes until I have to wake up for the morning. Or, what? But, happy 420, everybody.
Anyways, well, it's 4:26 now. Yeah. I always used to say, 420 is obviously not meant to be celebrated with punctuality, considering the subject matter. So that ends the debate on whether or not you can go 420 to 429, and as long as it's before 4:30, you're good, right? It would work in a court of law, that's all I'm saying.
Anyways, the kitten is awake. So, I suppose before we go, we shall have kitten. Where's a kitten? Show yourself, kitten. Over here. Kitten. Minutia. Minutia. Yeah, you forgot how small she was, didn't you? She's still that tiny. Meow.
Well, look at you. Since you have a bath, you're Miss Person. You got to be clean all the time, huh? Stop grooming yourself and be presentable. Meow. Little tiny kitten squeaking a meow. Don't fall. Don't fall. You're gonna fall. Good. Just keep chewing yourself. You're fine. Yeah. It'll work out. It'll work out. Gravity has no effect on you, dumbass. Ah. So, it is officially morning. Did y'all catch that? Was I effectively cameramanning that? The kitten just I was about to do it again. Okay, it's time for me to end the broadcast. Got teenage daughter farts echoing through the kitchen, and that's just not meant for YouTube, is it? I could have not explained what that noise was, but yeah, now you're laughing hysterically, so it was worth it. Anyways, gonna call it a broadcast now. Say goodbye, kitten. Say goodbye, kitten. Say goodbye, kitten. Say goodbye. Say goodbye. Yeah, that was goodbye. Anyways, thanks for watching, y'all. Please click the like button and subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. If you are a subscriber, check your subscription. Thanks once again for watching. In my heart and baby down in my soul. You, baby, you can't take it no more. No, I know I'm walking out that door the way you treated me too many times before. Oh, you know I want you there, I want to be right there with you.